And we are streaming over. And we are live. Welcome everybody to A Mighty Mystery. I'm your on-air host, Sara DiVello, and I'm thrilled to be here today with Glen Erik Hamilton, here to tell us about his brand new book, A Dangerous Breed. Glen, welcome. Tell us about your book.
Thank you so much, Sara. Well, let's show the book.
See it. Let's see it.
What the book looks like. So it's an actual physical thing. You know,
a lighthouse.
In these virtual days that we actually are still producing physical things.
Yes.
So A Dangerous Breed is the fifth novel in the Van Shaw series. It's a series of adventure thrillers, primarily crime thrillers set in my hometown of Seattle, Washington.
Yay.
And Van is an unusual cat. He was raised by his maternal grandfather, who was a professional thief and career criminal, and raised Van in that life and with that sort of skewed moral compass along the way. So Van outgrew that. The two men had a somewhat violent contretemps, and Van escaped into the military for about 10 years. And in the course of the series, he comes home, reestablishes his life, and tries to be a gray cat in a black and white sort of world along the way, and it gets into various adventures and scrapes throughout that. It's a series very much inspired by the Travis McGee series from John D. McDonald, and other series where the protagonist is a good guy looking for good things, but maybe works outside the law and outside of what we would consider polite society to accomplish his aims. So in A Dangerous Breed, Van's been home for a couple of years and gets a line of information on his mother, who died when he was about 6 years old. And he starts getting curious about what little he knows about her, what nothing he knows about his father, because she never talked about that when she became pregnant at 16. And starts following those threads. And it very much becomes a case of be careful what you wish for, because the individual that he comes across, who may well in fact have parented him, is not the sort of individual any sane person would want to meet. Having met them would logically flee the other direction. So that's where the title comes from. And the book is largely about how little we actually know about our parents. You know, we often get told things, and in our families, we take things for granted, or we make things up in our heads and just assume that's a fact. Yes. And it's about, discovering your parents as individuals, and also a certain amount of nature versus nurture. What do we take from them? What do we create for ourselves along the way? Are we destined to follow similar paths depending upon who our parents are?
Ooh, my God.
I threw a lot at you there.
And I received it. I caught it. I'm into it. This is so cool. I'm so excited. I just want to welcome all of our audience members. Everybody say hi. Let us know where you're watching from. Are you tuning in from Seattle, from Boston? Where in the world are you? Let us know. And if you have any questions for Glen, just type them in the comment box. This is your chance to have one-on-one access to Glen, and ask him anything about his book, his craft, his writing practice. Let's talk about mysteries and thrillers. Let's get into it.
Q&A. I love curveballs. Throw them out.
Okay, Glen has just cast the gauntlet. Audience, will you accept the challenge? Let's throw this guy some curveballs. Let's do it. So while everyone's thinking of their answers, I have to share just a few of your amazing reviews, a few of your blurbs. Welcome, Mia Maria, watching from Denver, Colorado. Awesome. Welcome, Bruce. Welcome. Let us know where everyone else is from. So Allison Brennan, New York Times bestselling author, says Van Shaw is one of the most interesting and loyal heroes in fiction today. Once again, Hamilton pens a complex, twisty tale that may be Shaw's most dangerous and emotional case to date. Atmospheric and taut, Dangerous Breed is a winner. Amazing blurb on that. Book Page says, if you're a Jack Reacher fan, you'll love Van Shaw. Who doesn't love Jack Reacher? I am in for this.
I do.
Yeah, we all do. Yes, absolutely. William Kent Kruger says Hamilton offers readers a thriller tour de force. In Dangerous Breed, the past collides violently with the present, and the result is a Pandora's box of secrets spilled open. It's taut, it's compelling, and it's so well written. It'll make authors jealous. I know I'm already feeling jealous. But here's the kicker. At its core, it's really all about family. And what could be more heartwarming than that? This is a bulldog of a story that once it sets its teeth in you, refuses to let go. Oh my gosh, this is amazing. I could go on and on. Amy says she's watching from Colorado Springs. Wow, we have 2 people from Colorado today. Very cool. Everyone, let us know what your questions are for Glen. And while you're thinking of them, type them in the chat box. I'll get them right over to him. Type them right in the comments. So Glen, tell us about your writing practice. Do you rise with the sun? Do you flow easily to your desk? Do the words pour out of you effortlessly? Or are you sort of clawing your way like a man through the desert, hard scrabble for every word? What's it look like?
It's all of the above, depending upon the day, really.
Okay.
I will rise with the sun, and those first 500 words will go great, and then I'm clawing for the next 50. It can be a very cyclical thing. You just got to trust it'll come around again along the way. I do go through patches where I'm not writing a lot, where I'm just dealing with life, especially lately, as we all are. And then I'll go through spates, whether it's on deadline or otherwise, where I'll just be producing pages every day. And it's just, naturally part of, get into a rhythm and I'm able to produce that. But I do find, if I make the space for the work to happen, I put on some instrumental music so that it doesn't distract me with lyrics or anything like that, get my quiet space and just delve into it. More often than not, things come. They may not be things that I end up keeping in the end, but words happen and I get words on the page. And I usually work to a word count, a specific word count, unless I'm stuck on time. If I only have 3 hours, then I'll do 3 or 4 writing sprints of about 45 minutes or so, each with a short break in between. And that's how things happen.
Oh, cool. So it's like an extended Pomodoro method.
Yes. Yeah. You can do the Pomodoro method of the really short sprints along the way. I'm not a strict adherent to writing sprints in that a strict writing sprint is as many words as you can possibly get down in the time you've got, right? Mm-hmm. I edit as I go, which is verboten in a strict writing sprint. You're not allowed to do that.
Yeah.
But it works for me. I've got enough experience now that I can crack the door and let the editor in a little bit without letting them take over or slow the momentum too much. And it helps because then I tend to write clean. More of what I write is stuff that I'll end up keeping.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, because I find that the writing brain and the editing brain, the creator brain and this editing brain cannot coexist, because if I get, my editor won't shut her yap and and she's like, this is stupid, and then my writer's like, I can't work under these conditions.
I think of it like volume control. Like I will let that editor have a voice, they can poke their head in the room, but they don't get to take over the keyboard, right? If it takes more than a few sentences to correct what I wanted to of the last sentence, I got to leave it alone. I got to keep going. Right.
Okay, cool.
I can't spend 10 minutes on a single sentence. That's not allowed.
No, unless, right. Exactly. Okay. There's a couple of things you said there that I want to unpack. So instrumental music, are we talking Kenny G? Like what kind of instrumental? Are you just vibing out?
Yes. I actually have Kenny G here in the room to play for me. No,
he serenades you.
It will generally be one of two things. It'll be either, classical, generally classical piano or classical violin, nothing too bombastic. No, not a lot of timpani going on, no big kettle drums, it's generally smoother stuff, quieter stuff. Haydn works well, Chopin, those sorts of things. Or, and this is probably 80% of what I listen to when I'm writing, it's like mid-century jazz. So it's Oscar Peterson, it's Red Garland, it's more modern, it's Ahmad Jamal. Basically anything that's like piano jazz or just after the Big Bang era, or Big Band era, where you'd have like the 50s and 60s quartets and things like that would play. That's very melodic. It's got a structure. It's not too dissonant. And that really works well for me. I don't know why that is, but I'll put that on Pandora or Spotify or whatever. And I've got some albums as well. And I'll just let that go. And for whatever reason, that rhythm of like mid 20th century jazz works really well for me.
Do you ever listen to Marcus Miller?
I've heard Marcus Miller. Yes, I do. And I do like Marcus Miller quite a bit. Yes.
My aunt works with him.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's fantastic.
She tours with him. She's been working with Marcus for, my goodness, I don't even know, like 30 years or something.
I'm going to have to put that on heavy rotation. That's fantastic.
Yeah, exactly. You should check out his new album, Laid Black.
Okay.
But funny story. He actually did Marcus actually did the soundtrack for The Trumpeter Swan, which is a Disney movie. He does a lot of soundtracks, actually. He did Two Can Play That Game. But while he was here in Boston, I went to the rehearsal, and LA called, and they needed him to redo one part of the music. So I gave Marcus a ride to the studio in my 14-year-old Blazer named Bob, with no air conditioning on a 96-degree day here in Boston in August. So poor Marcus was like, I'm Jamaican, I can handle it. And I was like, okay, because there's no AC.
All right. There we go.
Oh my gosh. All right. We have a question from the audience. Gail would like to know, Glenn, your bio mentions that you grew up on a sailboat. What a cool childhood. Would you like to talk about that?
Sure, absolutely.
What's that like?
The non-disclosure agreement has expired, so I can talk all about it now. So yes, my folks, when they got into hobbies, they really got into hobbies. And so, when I was young, they got into sailing, and we had a very small house, and we had a small sailboat that they learned on, and they decided they were going to sail around the world. So the plan was they sold both of those. They bought a much larger boat that was designed for ocean cruising, a 41-foot sailboat, pretty beamy. So held a lot of water, held a lot of fuel, was very rugged, very durable make. And the plan was that they were going to sail around the world when I finished high school.
Are you an only child?
I was an only child.
Okay.
So we moved aboard the boat when I was about 9. And the plan was I was going to go away to college, and they were going to sail around the world. And they did a version of that. Sail around the world is both very difficult and very expensive. And so then they had to save up and plan and train, learn, because they're not dumb. They prepared for this journey. They practiced.
Wow.
And so about the time I finished college, they went around the Pacific for about 5.5 years. And so they sailed to French Polynesia and Sea of Cortez in Mexico, and ended up in Auckland, New Zealand, and then came back, and they've been landlubbers ever since. But they definitely had their sailing adventure along the way. So
wow.
So when I grew up aboard a sailboat, we were moored, in a city, and I went to a regular junior high and high school, like kids do. I just walked farther to get to the bus. But on summers and holiday breaks, we would take the boat and go up into the San Juan Islands or Desolation Sound or areas of Canada, and just enjoy life aboard along the way. So it was very similar. The chores were different, but it was very similar to living in a very small apartment. If your family was in a very small urban apartment that maybe occasionally moved if the train went past, it would be kind of similar to that in many respects. Although occasionally I'd come home and the apartment would be gone, and then I'd have to go out to the end of the fuel dock and wait for them to come home.
Oh my God, this is so crazy. I've never met anyone who lived above a boat, lived aboard a boat. Okay, so just to make sure I understand, at 9 years old, you moved from a house onto the boat, and you just lived on the boat.
Yep.
From 9 until 18.
Until I went to college.
Then you went to college. So you lived on the boat for 9 years. That was basically your whole childhood.
Yep.
And every day you would just get off your boat, walk along the dock. Because I was thinking, oh, you must have been homeschooled.
Walk along the dock. Yeah, that's exactly right.
But you were not homeschooled. You would go to the school on the land, then go. Nope. So would you have friends over for play dates? Gail is saying, wow. Yes, wow. So would you have play dates? Could people come aboard or like?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Friends would come aboard. We'd hang out, but of course, you're all sharing the space. So if the friends come over, the parents have to be in the same space usually as the kids, or they're up in the cockpit perhaps, and slightly separated. But that's the challenge. Is it's just like I said, it's like a small apartment where you're on top of each other, right? So it's that kind of shared experience along the way. But yeah, I would have friends over, and friends would join us if we went on trips. So, like a friend would come with us and we would be gone for 2.5, 3 weeks
Oh
sailing,
my God.
during the summer. And so, and the friends kept me sane and kept my parents sane because I wouldn't bother them all the time. So that worked out well.
So did you have a bunk or your own room, or what was that?
I had the forward stateroom. So which, we say stateroom and it sounds very grand,
It
but
does.
basically it's a triangular room up at the front of the boat. Bunk on one side. They knew they only had the one kid, so they designed it for just one bunk, and then the rest of it was given over to a seat and a dresser and a hanging locker, what we would call a closet on a boat, a hanging locker, and a couple of bookshelves. Very important, because that's how you entertain yourself if you are out on a boat. You read a lot.
Right.
And when you run out of your books, you read your parents' books, even though you're probably too young to read those kind of books. But yes, that's what I did for entertainment, is I just read all the time.
Wow. Okay. So I think we've solved your lifelong love of books. This is where this came from. This is so cool. Wow. You're getting lots of hearts from the audience.
Oh, great. Fantastic.
Genevieve would say she just got her copy in the mail today. Does Van go to Ireland, or do you think he will someday?
I think he probably will someday. His grandfather, who raised him, was from Belfast. Left Belfast at the time of the Troubles in the 70s. Then came to Boston briefly. First time he was arrested was in Alston.
That sounds like that's a good place to get arrested.
Because at the time, I'm giving a lot of backstory here, but because at the time, the Winter Hill Gang and Whitey Bulger and those were basically running the city,
Yeah.
he could make a living there as a thief. So he came out to the Wild West of the Northwest, which was much less under control. And so, as a consequence, Van grew up speaking English, of course, but Irish as well at home. He would speak Irish.
Oh, okay.
And we have a good friend in Galway who is a speech therapist and speaks both English and Irish fluently. And she is my contact for those bits of Irish that I need to have in the books occasionally when Van speaks that. It's not in every book, but it's noted in the first one. It's going to be in this next one as well.
Cool.
But I'll have little bits of that there. But I would love it. I would love for Van to go to Ireland for his first time. If for no other reason, then I get to go back there as well. I've been there 2 or 3 times and have loved it every time. So
Ireland is so great. And it is, they call it the Emerald Isles. But it wasn't until I got there that I realized it really is the greenest place you've ever seen. It's so lushly, richly, deeply green.
It glows. It literally glows.
It does. It does. Oh my gosh. I'm loving these questions from the audience. Keep them coming. This is your chance. Maria, Mia, or Amy, or Gail, Genevieve, anybody have any more questions, or anyone else who's watching who hasn't had a question yet? This is your time. So ask Glen anything. So Glen, let's get back to your reviews. Mm-hmm. What is the secret to crafting such a quote unquote taut, compelling thriller? Because everyone's, so many of your blurbs said it was taut and compelling. Again, giving us reviews that any author would be jealous of. Tell us your secrets. How do you write a taut, compelling thriller?
Yeah, there's just as in the books I would grow up reading, there's almost always a central question that your protagonist is pursuing, right? They find out who killed this person, or they have to find out how to prevent this from happening, this terrible thing from happening, or they have to unravel a particular mystery. So there's like a driving question that they're always pursuing through it, but through that time there are other questions or conflicts that are always coming up at the time, right? Mm-hmm. And it doesn't necessarily mean a linear progression. I have to solve A to get to B, to solve that B to get to C, because that can honestly be very rote, and your readers can feel that rhythm. It's not a great thing. What you want really is a plot and subplot that interweave enough that they are always looking for the answer to this question. Ideally, any chapter should answer part of what's going on or raise a new question to keep them reading for the next one.
Yes. Okay. That makes sense. So as you're pursuing, so would you say that that's the secret to writing this taut, compelling book
I
that you
would say,
have?
yeah, if you know, taut generally means that hopefully you're not wandering off a field.
Yeah, you cut the fat.
You're pursuing the questions that the audience wants answered, right?
Yes.
So if your reader is just like, yes, but what happened to this person? And you don't answer that for 3 chapters, that's going to drive them a little nuts, right? It certainly drives me nuts as a reader. Unless there's an equally compelling question that I know I'm getting the answer to at the same time, right? And so that's keeping people on tenterhooks, right? That's letting them want to read more because you want to find out what happens, right? And mysteries, while they often have the central question of who done it or things like that, really good ones are almost always raising alibis or other questions or things that the audience would also like to know the answer to.
And then finding that balance point, as you said, between not dragging it out so long that you drive the audience crazy,
Right.
but you do keep them going.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. If there's a delay, if there has to be a delay in answering the big question of the book, you've got to involve them in action scenes. You've got to involve them in heartbreak. You've got to involve them in other things that are going on, so that they're as I said, they're discovering something new with every chapter. Every chapter's got to be new to the game, right?
I love that. That makes sense. We have 2 more questions. Oh, a couple more questions. Mia would like to know, Mia Maria would like to know, do you think that Van might decide to start training for a different career? Yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah. Well, that's it.
Question.
He's trying to find his purpose, you know. So he was a soldier. He thought he was always going to be a soldier. He can't be that anymore. So he needs to discover what that is. The problem is what he's good at is generally pretty antisocial. He's good at crime. He's good at stealing. He's good at violence. He's good at surviving, you know, when things come at him. None of those are necessarily very marketable skills in a polite society, right? So not if he wants to live, you know, the way that he'd like to live. So discovering his purpose is really kind of the major arc of the book. In the end of A Dangerous Breed, he's actually, this is a nice teaser, he's actually pretty much got a line on what he wants to do. And some of that is related to what he discovers, of course, about his parents and about his mother and what she was trying to do with her life before it was cut short.
That's Mia, I hope that answered your question. That sounds great. Mia saying yes, now that his military career is essentially over. Exactly. Amy would like to know, I'm interested in how Van would look at the federal government coming to Seattle like they are in Portland right now. I love that question, Amy. Yes. Speaking for all of us, tell us, Glenn, what would Van feel about that?
Yeah, well, there's a question of timeliness there, right? If, you know, when we write books, we're generally writing them a year or more in advance of publication. And so, you know, how much can you write about current events, given that it will no longer be current very soon?
Right.
And so for Van, in the early days of the pandemic, before the Black Lives Matter and other protests and movements really became a part of our national consciousness, when we were all just dealing with quarantine. And in the early days of that, I felt pretty compelled, because Seattle was very central to the start of that in the United States. I needed to know what Van was doing. And so I wrote a short story called Essential Business and put it on my blog for free. So there's a key for listeners, folks who are listening now, is there's a free short story on my website that folks can read.
Everybody tune in to the website.
That's, you know, so you learn a little bit about what Van's doing, at least in the first couple of months of quarantine. Well, now, of course, things have changed. We've had CHOP in Seattle, the Capitol Hill Occupied protest that was in existence for about a month or so. And now we see in Portland, there's reports of federal agents who do not announce themselves and seem to actually disguise which agency they're with, taking people off the streets, apparently.
To undisclosed locations.
Not booking them officially, right? So there's no record. They don't book them. They just detain them, photograph them, and let them go.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, what secret police do.
Yes.
That you know, that is right out of the secret police handbook. You know, if you are not, and so Van would, would likely see this as reinforcement for his view of what law enforcement is, which is, if it's done right, it's accountable and it's peacekeeping. If it's done wrong, and it often is, it's bullying, it's political, it's law enforcement for political means, not for actual law enforcement of the law or keeping the peace or preventing crime. It's really more about leverage. And so that would echo Van's natural suspicion of what, of how law often gets corrupted for somebody else's use as opposed to being what it's intended to be.
Exactly. And for someone like Van, it would increase his healthy suspicion. I think it's, and erode any trust.
Right. It would,
as it is for a lot of us.
Funny because Van does have, relationships with police officers whom he does trust because they've proven themselves to be honorable and willing to do the right thing, even if it's not in their or their department's best interest. Right. That's character. Right. And I think, I personally feel that a lot of policemen and a lot of police departments have that character along the way. The problem is that there are a lot who don't. And, you can't have one without the other. It's not a matter of a few bad apples. It's a systemic problem that we need to deal with.
Yeah, exactly. As Chris Rock says, in some careers, you can't have bad apples. One of them is pilots. No one's going to get on a plane and say, most of our pilots are good, but we've got a few bad apples. Nobody's getting on that flight. I know I'm not.
Right.
And this is another career where it's actually completely not acceptable to have a few bad apples. So yes, and that is something that we're reckoning with and dealing with globally and I think our beloved Black community has been dealing with this for a lot longer, and it's something that's necessarily and very, very delayed, very belatedly coming up for in the white community now. So I think we're all working through that together now. Gail would like to know, another question from Mia. What is a writing, and then I'll get right to you, Gail. Mia would like to know, what is a writing environment you'd like to try that you haven't been able to, and what have you tried so far? Good question. Let's hear about the writing environment.
Wow. Okay.
We've got the Kenny G streaming. No,
we got Kenny here. We've got Kenny here playing for me. Keep it up, Ken. That's good. Hang on. Here's the biscuit.
Yeah.
So it's all right because Kenny G has a very large house in Seattle. I don't know. He's from that area, so
I didn't even know that.
Yeah. He's a very large house, or at least he used to back when we lived there. So I assume it's still there. Writing environment, that's interesting. I've done everything from writing at a day job desk to writing, bundled up in bed with the laptop, to just grabbing 15 minutes while waiting for the bus. So, I firmly believe you can train yourself to write anywhere along the way.
Wow.
For me, the key is the music. If I turn on the music, that's the Pavlovian response that gets me writing.
Yes. Okay. That makes sense. Your brain's like, oh, I got to work now.
That helps a lot. One of the things I haven't done a lot that I'd love to try really isn't about the environment of writing, but it's about the freedom of income and movement to go to a lot more writing conferences than I'd like and train myself to write on the road. Because I have written on the road a lot, but it'd be interesting to see, can I tour around going to conferences for a month or two, during the high season of that, and be able to write consistently in hotels and airplanes and things like that. So
yeah. Let me know if you're able to do that. I know I cannot.
Well,
actually.
I'd like to try it just to go to the conferences, really. But being able to write during it would be great too.
Yeah, exactly. I have never been able to do that because there's, my conference self, which is the outgoing, on self, and then there's my quiet, inward focused, not engaging with other people, writing self, and I've never been able to merge the two, and I cannot write on airplanes.
Now, when you take like the Myers-Briggs and the other things, like, are you on the line between introvert and extrovert?
I am an extroverted introvert. So I'm definitely an introvert. Like and I've learned that, So this is something I actually learned. I thought that introverts were just, sort of very quiet, hobbits, like, cave dwellers like myself. And extroverts were like my husband who, loves to be out and about and chatting with people. But I actually learned that introverts are very capable of that, as I can get up on a stage and moderate a panel or give a talk or whatever, but it's what fuels you. So what fuels me is silence and solitude. When I'm drained and exhausted, I want silence and solitude. I want a book. I want to curl up with my puppy and I want to be by myself. Whereas what fuels my husband is like chatting with people, talking with people, going to dinner, going to parties. And that's what fuels, so that's like the real difference. I'm definitely, by that standard, an introvert. Like I love my silence and solitude, but I have an extroverted self. It just takes a lot of energy to do it.
Got it.
How about you?
I'm on, whenever I test, it's always like right on that line between the two, where similar to you, I think I'll get a lot of energy from being with people at conferences.
Yeah.
But at a certain point, the battery is full and I have to go away now.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, it's like, okay, yeah, I'm done. I'm exhausted.
Yes.
I just got to go rest for a while and get some of that energy out by writing or just having quiet time.
So it's the quiet time that refuels you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So. Yeah. So by that measure, then you're an introvert.
I would be an introvert as well. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Love that question, Mia. Thank you for asking that awesome question. I love that. Gail would like to know, Glenn had other careers in his journey to writing. How did he find his way to being a thriller writer? Tell us.
I'll hit the thriller part of that before I hit the writer part of that. I'm a thriller writer because that's what I grew up reading. I would grow up
on the boat.
I grew up reading adventures and mysteries and crime stories and things like that. And probably if I grew up reading poetry, I might want to be a poet. But I didn't. I grew up reading airplane novels and potboilers and Agatha Christie and all these wonderful things. And that kind of story is always what jazzed me. So the writing part of it, I always enjoyed writing. I wasn't really necessarily drawn to do it. I never minded doing creative writing in school or even reports and things like that. That was all fine. I didn't have a block for that. But there was a part in the back of my brain, I kind of always knew someday I'm going to write. It was just sort of there. And early on, I'll digress for just a second. When I was, I think in college, a friend of mine took me to a science fiction convention.
You're getting a lot of hearts and thumbs up for this, Glenn.
Okay, great. A friend of mine took me to a science fiction convention, and there was a panel with writers of sci-fi. And
wait, did you like sci-fi, or you just went for the heck of it?
I just went for that. I'd read some sci-fi, but I went for the heck of it because my friend, I think it was Mark was going, so I went with him. And it was a small conference, but there was a panel of writers, and they were taking questions from the audience. And I could tell that they were a couple of them were a little bored by the questions. And a lot of the questions I noticed had to do not with they were from people who didn't want to write, but they wanted to have written.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? If you know what I mean, they were looking for a magic bullet or something like that, not maybe realizing that every writer's process is different, things like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they didn't really want to write. They wanted to just have it be established that they were writers.
Yes.
And I think that kind of I remember that flipping a switch in my mind of, it's like, oh yeah, I'd like to write someday, but I don't have to offer any excuses for not doing it. Like when it's time, it'll be
I like that.
When it's the right time, it'll be time. And we moved to California about 15 years ago. And I had the chance to take a few months off work before I had to hunt for a job. And so I just went to the library, the Buena Vista Library here in Burbank, and sat in a carrel and wrote longhand each day to see if I enjoyed the act of it. Because I knew it was going to be hard. I came into it like this is going to be hard work, because it is.
Because you've been at the conference and you'd heard, yeah.
Yeah, let me see if I enjoy the hard work of writing, because it's all.
I love that.
And I did, and I liked it. But I also realized, if I'm going to learn how to do this, I need to take some classes. I need to get some instruction. And so I took some classes through UCLA Extension and a mystery writing workshop, and then got into a master class where the 3 or 4 people within the master class would bring 10 pages every week to work on with the instructor, who was an established mystery writer, Geraldine Farmer. And we would read the pages out loud, critique them, note things to change, and either rework them for the next week or move on. And I describe that as graduate school, 10 pages at a time. It was just reworking or recrafting or talking about it along the way. And, I was in the class as my first 2 to 3 books were written. 3 books were written, actually. Along the way, and just it was the chance to workshop them. And those were my beta readers, right? It's a very successful group. We have 3 other authors in our Saturday group who have been published.
From that class?
From that class.
Oh, I love that. So that's still, and so 15 years later, you're still in that same group.
Well, I'm not. I left a couple of years ago. But mostly I left not because I wasn't getting anything out of it, but because the pace of my writing had to be much faster than the class allowed for.
Oh, then the 10 pages.
And then I would go on deadline and I'd be like, you won't see me in class for a month because I need every moment I can to work on this, right? I can't take half Saturday to go do the class. I've got to produce 10 pages during that time I should be in class.
Right.
So, yeah. And so after a while, it just became natural to like take the risk and cut the cord and move on. But it was still a very useful experience to do that and have those friends and beta readers who knew my work really well, of course, by that time. And I knew their work really well. So we went to those weak points, and you can kind of go to the heart of going, you're doing this again. And they would catch me out for mistakes I was making and the like. So that was very handy. So that was a long-winded answer to becoming a writer, but that was my journey to it, of getting into it.
Wow, that's so interesting. I love that. Mia would like to know, have you ever had a really bad block? Oh yeah, I want to know that too. Tell us about how did you work your way through it?
Yeah. Block is, when people picture a block, they picture the writer just sitting there staring at the page. And I believe it's very easy to work around that, because you work around it by going and go write something else. Mm-hmm. Don't write that thing that you're stuck on. Go write something else. Write a short story. Write a different chapter. Write something like that. And I'll still do that on books where I'm like, I don't know what happens here, or I don't know what's going to happen in this next dialogue scene. It's a quieter scene. I haven't thought about it enough. And I'll give myself some time to think about it. But if nothing's coming, I'll be like, well, I'm going to get to this within about 30 pages. So maybe I'll go draft that instead, and I'll just jump ahead and give myself permission to do that. Probably the toughest block I've had, there's a couple of them. One was I tried working on a standalone between books 3 and 4. And I got quite a ways into it, but it wasn't gelling. And it wasn't that I was blocked on the writing. It was that I had the backstory, I had the history, I had everything else. It was the modern day story that just wasn't clicking for me. It just wasn't there. There was something lacking in it was plot mechanics as opposed to a story that had to be told, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah, that does make sense.
And then I got an idea that really excited me for the 4th Van Shaw book. And I went, oh, I'd much rather be writing that. And my agent, bless her, and editor were both very understanding. And they're like, well, if you're feeling passion for that, go write that instead. Because that's the story that needs to be told. I'm like, okay, great. So I went and I wrote that quickly. That came out very, very fast. There's been a more recent block with dealing with COVID.
I wanted to pause. How far into the one that you realized was the plot mechanics that your agent said go for the one?
It was probably about 150 pages.
Yeah. Wow. So you were in it.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't working. Did you ever go back to it, or you were like, no, it's just not working?
Someday. It's pretty evergreen. I can come back to it at any time.
Okay.
But oddly enough, I have an idea for another standalone that I'm going to write after I finish this Van book, that I'm very excited about. And again, I'll give it a lot of thought before I launch into it. But another block was more recent with the pandemic.
Yes.
I had a really hard time in the first 3-4 months of this year getting going.
Me too.
That's due this fall, just because I'd write, but it wasn't gelling because there were just so many mental and other distractions going on. It was really tough. It wasn't a block as in I couldn't produce pages. It was a block as in the pages, the ideas I was having weren't exciting me. And interestingly enough, writing that short story helped to knock some of that free. Because I'm like,
that's so
okay,
cool.
this is timely. This is right now. I was literally reading, I have a subscription to the Seattle Times to keep up with local news. And I was reading the news every day to try to go, okay, still valid? Is this still happening right now? Are they still setting up the football stadium as a possible care facility?
Yeah.
They've been doing that for a while. They were bringing Army doctors in to do that.
Yeah.
Before they realized they didn't need it. But for about 3 weeks there, they were planning to house patients in the stadium because they had run out of room.
Yeah. And it's hard to, I'm going to say it, it's impossible to work under these kinds of conditions when you're seeing your football stadium become a makeshift hospital, or when you're seeing, the refrigerated trucks outside in New York with bodies because they can't, deal with them fast enough, or,
Absolutely.
the hospital tents on Central Park. It's a lot. It's impossible to just be like, well, anyway, Van, anyway, back to Van.
Yeah. And it's odd writing the current book now, because I've got to assume that within a year when this is published, the world has changed and we're back to something resembling normal.
God willing.
So, yes. and I don't necessarily want to talk too much about what had happened in the pandemic, because then that confuses readers later when they're reading it, so it's very challenging. Fortunately, writing that story kind of knocked things loose for me, and I was able to really get in gear with book 6, which is what I'm working on now.
I love that. Yeah, exactly. And I was talking about this with Ann Kim, who I was just interviewing right before this. Yes, and we were talking about how, how is this going to affect it? And do you incorporate it? Do you ignore it? What's it? Because the world is so different. I mean, I was jokingly tweeting a couple of weeks ago, creating a mock romance story where it's like, and he took off his mask and she took off her mask, and then they hand sanitized for the CDC recommended 30 vigorous seconds. It's like, I don't know. It's so crazy. Mia says, this is a great interview. Thank you so much, Mia. Thank you for your great questions. Thank you for being here. She says, it sounds like your agent and editor make an awesome support team. Yeah. Tell us about your support team. How do you work with them? Are they great? Have you been with the same ones the whole time? Are you ever like, no, you're wrong? What are ever disagreements or their drama? Give us the 411.
There's no real gossip.
Spill the tea.
There's plenty of drama in my head writing. I don't need drama publishing too. No, I work with great people. I'm going to give the short version of this story. I met my agent when I went to the Thriller Fest conference in New York City in 2013.
Oh, cool.
And at that time, I had been with my writing group for about 5 years.
You're getting hearts for this.
And great. And I had a manuscript that was pretty much ready to go. And I just wanted to get some practice pitching. So I went to their pitch fest, which is like speed dating with agents. You sit down, you pitch your work. They say, send me this, send me that. No, thank you. You move on to the next person. It got a lot of interest, which was great. And out of that, I was lucky enough to get a dynamite agent, Lisa Vance with the Aaron Priest Agency. And Lisa's, agents are the first person to champion your work. They're like the first person out of your circle to say, this is worth something. I think somebody will buy this, and they go out and they champion your work. And the validation of that is just gigantic. It's just huge. And then the second level of validation comes from an editor who buys it and holds it close to their heart and shepherds it along the way. And they do that with every book, right? Hopefully for as long as the working relationship lasts. And so I've been very fortunate in not only having a fantastic agent, but I have a fantastic editor, Lissa Kirsch at William Morrow. Lissa's an executive editor there. She knows what works. And the reason there's not a lot of drama is because I shut up and listen. And if she says this subplot, whatever, really didn't work for me, I'll be like, okay, how come? And I'll listen to it and hopefully I'll be bright enough to take that advice and go change it along the way. Because number one, I think they know their business really well, and I want to listen to that. But number two, it's, even though I've written at this point 5 books, almost 6, I still feel I'm very much a student. And I hope I never kind of lose that, of feeling like a student along the way. You know, in that I had a background in the martial arts for a long time. And one of the things I loved about the martial arts is you're always learning. You're never done. You know, as one of my instructors says, a black belt just means that you're a serious student. Now you can start learning, right? Now that you've done the work to prove that you're serious about it, now you get to start learning, right? So writing is kind of the same way. It's like, well, now that I've produced 5 books, now I get to really start learning. You know, I can branch out. I can try different things. I can try stuff that scares me, you know, because I know I can write a book. Let me see if I can write a better book. Let me see if I can write a different book.
So what scares you?
Changing tense. This new one I'm writing is in a different tense. The first 5 books have all been in first person. So they're all from Van's point of view, and I know his voice super well. And now I'm going to branch out, and we're going to see him through other characters' eyes. And we're going to be third person. I wrote the short story in third person deliberately to practice, to work that out a little bit. Playing with structure. I play with structure a fair amount in the books, A Dangerous Breed. Hold it up again.
Hold it up. Let us see. Hold it there for a while so you can really see it.
A Dangerous Breed plays with structure quite a bit along the way, in that there are what I call interstitial chapters that show Van at younger ages. There's
people are saying, "Ooh, you're intriguing us."
One plot line might resolve itself much earlier than you think it does, but then resurface later. You know, things like that aren't a strict linear thriller structure fascinate me, because they're both surprising to me, but they're surprising to the reader too. Where a reader will go, "Oh, I wasn't expecting that to happen. I thought we were on this path. Okay, we're over here now."
Yeah.
And that's always fun to do. But I find if I'm writing a little bit on the tightrope, that's a very good place to be.
Ooh. Yeah, and we're getting some oohs from the audience. So I think we're all intrigued by this. We're here for it. Another question from Gail this time. Joe Lansdale is also a martial arts person. Is there something about writing thrillers in martial arts? Maybe
it's the study along the way. I'm a huge Joe Lansdale fan, by the way. I just finished rereading The Bottoms not long ago, and I also finally caught up with the last season of Hap and Leonard on TV, which came out a couple of years ago. I caught up with it because I had been saving it like a gem, because I knew there were only 3 seasons, so I had to like watch them slow.
Yeah, you gotta spread that out.
Spread it out. It's
you gotta ration yourself.
Right, exactly. But yes, I think there's some of it, because it's a combination both of discipline. You know, you have to learn the craft. You have to learn how to do sentence structure. You have to learn how to throw a punch. You know, these things are very similar, but there's also amount of, well, you don't know what's going to come at you, so you got to relax.
Ooh.
Right. There's a true thing that you learn in in all sports, I think, but especially in combat sports, is a relaxed muscle is a fast muscle. Like if you're tense, you've got to untense in order to move. Right.
Okay.
Which is why if you watch a very good boxer or a very good fighter, they're very relaxed in the ring, because that's how they move so quickly.
Oh, interesting. I've always wondered how they move so quickly, because they move quicker, I've noticed, than I could ever myself.
Well, me too. Yeah, I can't move like that anymore, if I could move anything like that ever.
Yeah.
But they're very relaxed, so that when they move, it's explosive, and then they're relaxed again. Right. So writing, I'll belabor the metaphor a little bit. Writing is a little bit of that. I got to calm myself down to let those things happen, to let those move, right? You know, I get Kenny G here to play for me, calm myself down, and the happens, right? But if I'm worked up, if there's a pandemic, it's kind of hard to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. And actually, as a yoga teacher, I use yoga and breathing techniques to
Mhm.
calm myself because, exactly as you said, a tense mind. If I'm like, when is it going to be over? How many people are going to die today? What is it? Where? What about the tent in the field? That's the hospital. I can't write from that place. I have to calm down in order to create. A calm mind is a creative mind,
Mhm.
and that's so interesting. We have another question. Actually, two more. Gail, I apologize. You asked this question before, and I got so excited I missed it. So I will get to it now. What do you like about Columbo? I also noticed, Gail and I both noticed, apparently in your bio, you're a Columbo fan. What do you like about that
I
bumbling
am a
doofus?
huge
That
fan.
bumbling doofus.
Well, we were talking about but he's not a bumbling doofus. You think he's a bumbling doofus. People underestimate him.
Mm,
He's really very observant and very
yes.
right. One is that we were talking about structure, and
Mm,
Columbo is a fine example of it's not the first to do it, but it's maybe the one to do it best of. It's the inverted structure. You know who killed him, right? You see who killed him at the start of the
mm.
show. It's about how Columbo's going to catch them. And
Ooh,
that's pretty
interesting.
fascinating. It's also fascinating because we never get really tired of Columbo because we don't spend the whole show with him. We spend a lot of the show with the guest star, the villain, right? And so Columbo's the thing that comes in, the thing that comes in, and then we get to see two actors, hopefully very good actors, play off one another. So the show is always a similar structure, but always different because there's always somebody else playing that game with Peter Falk. So structurally speaking, it's fascinating. I had the chance to briefly meet William Link, one of the creators, when he got the Grand Master Edgar Award a couple of years ago, and
Wow.
I'm a huge fan. The other fascination I have of it is it makes no pretense of being real. In other words, you never see Columbo for the most part at the station. You never see him at home. He's always out. He's always working. You don't know how much of his personal life is real. The gotchas that he gets the people on would never hold up in court. You know, none of that has anything to do with how much you enjoy the story. It's a
and
heightened reality, right? And I believe thrillers are a lot like that too, is that the audience is willing to have
mm.
a certain amount of suspension of disbelief if they're really having fun. And I think that's true.
That's true. That's so true. Gail says she's a huge fan as well. And she says, quote, just one more question. Was Columbo's way to catch the person off guard?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that just one more thing. Just when they're relaxed, you hit them.
Genevieve would like to know, what do you do to relax? Yeah, great question, Genevieve. What do you do to get into that relaxed, calm mind, relaxed muscle state so that you can create, so that you can move
Yeah,
fast? Tell us.
some of it is making the space. You find the quiet space. You turn on the music. You throw Kenny G a biscuit. But but a lot of it, exercise helps a lot too.
Mhm.
I've enjoyed sports and other things my whole life. I like yoga as well. And I like it's a nice contrast with boxing. So it's nice to throw both of those into the mix. But exercise is really the way that I find that I de-stress because it's one of the only times I can turn off my head.
Yeah.
It's like when if I'm exercising this hard, I can't think about anything else while I'm exercising. And so
Right.
it's a nice mental break.
You must be exercising harder than me. I just pedal gently.
But
uh,
you know what it's like with yoga, right? When you're focused
yeah.
on the sequence along the
Yes.
way, that's pretty much all you can do is do that sequence, right?
That's true. That's very true. Gail pointing out, Mrs. Columbo has no first name, nor does Columbo himself. Yeah, who is
Right,
who
right.
is this mysterious man? Oh my gosh. Um, Glenn, I know I am. This has been such a fantastic interview. We have loved having you here on A Mighty Mystery, right here on Mighty Blaze. I know you have another interview in just 8 minutes, and I want to give you a chance to have a sip of water and do some shadow boxing.
Right, right. Get
However
up.
you get yourself hyped up for your
Oh, this
next
has been
interview.
wonderful. Thank you so much, Sarah.
This has been so wonderful. Thank you to our wonderful audience. Thank you for all your amazing questions. They have been so thoughtful and interesting, and they have really helped us to get to know Glenn better. So thank you for joining us. Thank you, everybody. Glenn, we cannot wait to read your book. Everybody, buy A Dangerous Breed. Buy it if you can through our very special partnership, bookshop.org, to support independent bookstores who we love
Yes.
and who need our dollars right now. And it's on sale. So it's a win-win-win for everybody. I will post the link in the interview. Everyone, Gail says this has been great. Thank you, Sarah and Glenn. Thank you all for joining us. And we will see you next time right here on A Mighty Blaze.
Thank you so much.